Warning, the Renegade Recruiter is not for the soft, timid, or faint-hearted. If you need permission or seek approval from your mother, spouse, mates in the pub, or anyone else for that matter, this really isn't for you. If any of what you've heard puts you off in the slightest, I advise you not to listen any further. You've been warned. Prepare yourself for the no bullshit, zero fluff. Quick, dirty, and uncensored secrets for any serious recruitment, staffing, and search business owner who wants to earn more money with less work and fewer headaches, without having to kiss ass or bend over backwards to please anyone. He's a relentless and fearless renegade who will stop at nothing to reveal the harsh, unforgiving, and brutal truth about what it really takes to succeed in this business. He's a guy people love to hate and hate to love. It's your host, Terry Edwards. The Renegade Recruiter is unleashed.
Hello. This is Terry Edwards, Renegade Recruiter, and welcome to another episode of Renegade Recruiter Unleashed. And of course, we're joined by our co-host, Drew Edwards. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And today our guest is Jermaine Edwards. So that's three Edwards on the same podcast. I wonder if there's an actual name for that when you have got three Edwards on the same podcast. And by the way, Jermaine is not related to us in any way whatsoever. So Jermaine, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. And by the way, three Edwards is a masterpiece.
Awesome. Hey, listen, I'm going to give you a high five for that. I love that. Nice one. Yeah.
Jermaine, just for anybody who hasn't had the pleasure of getting to know you, doesn't know who you are, can you tell us sort of who you are and what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of an accidental salesman. So I came across sales 10 years ago and fell into the kind of the curiosity of how people behave and buy. And so today on that journey, I now help key account managers, sales leaders better understand how they can create kind of predictable, repeatable sales from their key customers and differentiate their value for deepened relationships.
Awesome stuff. So I would imagine you're a very popular guy.
Gosh, I'd like to be more popular, but absolutely. I definitely are with my customers and clients and having a great time in that process as well.
Great stuff.
Excellent. So is there a particular market that you actually target, Jermaine?
Yes, I tend to now attract more people from the enterprise companies and technologies who are moving to this place of quote customer success, where they're recognizing that they need to align the way people in business and their businesses look at their customer service, but also align that to the top tier clients that they have. So I work with them really closely on enabling them to have really activate a different mindset and approach their customers with a different set of skills to get different results that it wouldn't have had otherwise.
Brilliant. Great stuff. And Jermaine, I do want to ask sort of a few more questions about your business and how you help people. But before we get into that, this is a question that we'd like to ask just to break up the interview a bit, get to know you a little bit better as well. But can you tell us something about you that most people don't know? So perhaps an interesting or funny story, just something that you don't share with people usually.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share this. I was kind of 5 years into of my sales career, and I got the opportunity to travel to San Francisco for the first time. I took my family with me, and I have 5 kids. And wow. So when we travel quite. It's a big deal when we travel. and so we got to the States, and I was preparing for a meeting, and my wife had handed me basically my kind of pack of I guess what you call them, kind of cufflinks, as it were. And so what I did is I took up the cufflinks, grabbed up the first bag I saw, and ran out the door. Now I have 2 briefcases. One that has typical work, and one that's kind of it's a spare one. So I picked up the spare, not really knowing what was inside it, not really checking, which I should have. So I ended up getting to the meeting with a fairly high-level executive. And in the middle of the meeting, I open up my bag, and these bunch of My Little Ponies fall out on the desk. And to my horror, obviously, and it was lucky that this guy had children himself and could empathize. But it was extremely embarrassing. I didn't have any of the documentation I needed for the sales meeting, and we ended up having a very good chatter after that.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And how old are your kids?
So my eldest is 11, the youngest is 5 weeks.
Oh wow!
4 girls and 1 boy.
Brilliant.
That must make for an interesting household, Jermaine.
It is absolutely. It wouldn't happen any other way though.
Yeah, excellent. Good for you. Good for you. And before you got into this, tell us a bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so I kind of started out kind of young hustler in East London as in coming back from Jamaica. My parents are from the Caribbean, and so I kind of started out with kind of a taster of it when I started to actually write songs for dinner money. So I used to be heavily in the music scene, and I used to kind of prey on people who were trying to be pop stars and pretend to write them hit songs and sell it to them for dinner money. And that kind of got me on this kind of track of really understanding how I could do that better over time. So eventually, fast track about 10 years, I ended up being in Germany, and in Germany I ran a dance studio while I was studying. And it was really from that place that I decided that I was going to commit myself to a career in sales once that business started to do better. But I recognized there was something missing. Up until that point, even at 22 years old, as at that time, I'd never read a sales book in my life. I actually didn't even know self-help books or things even existed. And I was at university. So it wasn't until somebody handed me a book by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits, I recognized there's this whole new world of development that I hadn't kind of tapped into. And so moved to the States. I ended up doing some work out there, selling garden furniture door to door in South Carolina. And then got headhunted back to the UK, spent some time at a publishing company called Haymarket, did really well there, working on their digital campaigns and setting actually kind of recruitment to the print and packaging industry to get them to actually stop printing and use our digital platform to advertise their jobs, and did that for a while. Then moved on to enter the events industry, which is where I kind of found my rhythm, did pretty well there, but then decided that I wanted to dive into education and worked for about 7 years after that, almost 7 years, working for a fairly large kind of or medium-sized global training company, selling to executives and high-level organizations. And that's where I wrote my book, started to support and train some of my peers and start to train people outside of work and started to see those successes. And I thought, what I'm learning from other people and what I'm discovering, I would love to be able to share with people in a different way.
Awesome. Great background there. So it's a real sales background. Tell us a bit about your book, please, Jermaine.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called The Key Account Hack. It's a bit of kind of an odd name, but essentially the purpose of it is a set of principles or mindset that offers you the chance to find the optimal route to find with your customers to produce predictable and repeatable sales with them forever. So I walk through a set of 8 principles within the book that enables somebody to really kind of think through how they're actually engaging with their customers at different stages in their relationship and what they can amplify and access in those times to ensure they're getting the most profitable outcomes from it.
Awesome.
So could you give us an example of that?
Yeah, of course. So I often talk about the clarity of expectation to being one of them. So within key account management, you have kind of 3 areas of engagement, really. So you have kind of relational engagement, strategic engagement, and your tactical engagement. So relational engagement is, I guess, your ability to connect with your clients and deepen trust and influence. So you're looking at how you intentionally on a week-to-week basis ask the question, how can I build, I guess, a stronger relationship with my customer this week? How can I deliver value to him in this week? That's what you're asking. And strategic engagement is about your ability to kind of align yours and your customers' goals to one or multiple mutually beneficial outcomes for you and your business. Mm-hmm. And tactical engagement is what specifically the tactics you can use to help you get to that goal. And so when I start talking about the first principle, which is looking at kind of clarity of expectation, what I often find is that we can often sell from a place of assumption. So once a customer becomes a customer, we immediately believe we're more important than perhaps the customer believes we are to their business.
Mm.
And so what I often say is that you need to kind of bridge what I call the client expectation gap, which is kind of the distance between your perceived experience of who you are to your client and what their experience is in terms of the impact your service or product actually has for their business. Now, once you understand what that gap is, you can begin to bridge it and increase the value perception of your business to that company. And then once you increase the value, you're then able then to position much higher, more profitable services to that customer over time.
Excellent. Excellent.
Brilliant. And sorry,
Rick, go on.
I was gonna sort of go back a step to in your songwriting days. Have you sort of I guess composed a song for anybody that we would know now?
No, I wish. I really, really wish. I managed to meet some fascinating people along the way, because I used to play bass for a lot of different people. Did some work when Craig David was really, really underground. I did some session work with him at the time, and that's probably the most famous person I've ever kind of done any specific work with. But as for the songwriting, it was really for those people I knew weren't really going to get anywhere, but were willing to give me some money at the time.
Yeah.
that's the honest answer right there.
Yeah, and you were honing your selling skills. So I'm just fascinated, because I have to say I'm fascinated by sales in itself. So I'm just from your point of view, just be interested. What is it about sales that you find so interesting?
I think for me the immediate attraction was this idea, and it's going to sound really funny and simplistic, but I really found it interesting how somebody could speak with another person and that person be willing to give them money. And I was like, why would they do that? Why would the person just like speak with somebody and then decide to give them money? And I know it sounds really simplistic, but essentially to the outside world of those people who don't study sales, it almost looks like that.
Yeah, I can totally get that. And I tell you what I'd add to that. I can totally get that. Is then another person could speak to that same salesperson and they won't buy from them. And why is that?
Exactly. Yeah. So you can look at those things. So I was fascinated to why those things happen. Now, I'll kind of offer some disclosure here. I don't think anybody has arrived at all. And I've learned a tremendous amount. I definitely have had some success. I've seen my clients have success. But the wonderful thing I find about it is that you're always discovering new ways to improve the way you communicate with people, and you're learning so much about yourself in the process, because sales by any definition begins with serving first, and so you kind of understand the other person more before even understanding yourself in the process in some ways. So a lot of the focus you have on sales is about the other person, which is great, but also you need to have a retrospective view of who are you as a salesperson, and how does that authentically translate to how you communicate. And I think that's a really important process as well.
Excellent. Drew, up to you.
Yeah, Jermaine, with the clients you work with now, typically what are some of the sort of the biggest challenges they have around sales? What's sort of the biggest thing you help them solve right away?
Yeah, so a lot of this is about kind of stakeholder management. So you can find that companies, you have a rep who has, about 40 different customers, and they're saying, okay, the business says to them, okay, we want to see this percentage growth with all your 40 accounts. Well, that's just completely unrealistic. So what I tend to come in with and the manager says, well, we're really struggling to get traction with these types of accounts that are really important to us, but the sales cycles are really, really long. And for some reason, we've had this customer for 5 or 10 years, but we're still going through the same buying process. And so I come in and help to troubleshoot what the actual root challenges are. And then we simply just enable us to get unstuck, and then to amplify the things that are going well and add to those things that could contribute to shortening the sales cycle and adding more profitability to those relationships.
Awesome. And in terms of shortening the sales cycle, I mean, can you give us sort of one or two things that anyone listening to this could do right now to do the same with their clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are tons of things you can begin with. I think the first thing is, going back to expectation, is just that. So it's understanding what is actually the perceived importance for me to their business. Now, if I am important to their business, as you believe, then what you can do is go in and have some really kind of honest conversations. So a question you could ask is, establishing value and saying, well, yo, Mr. Customer, or whoever is you're speaking with, what today is the current impact of our services and products to you? Because we can't evaluate that, only you can. Now, once you understand what that impact is, you can then ask the second question, which is, listen, we've been working together for a while. I know that the impact that we're having is doing X. I wonder what that means now for the way we do business tomorrow. So what does that mean now for how we do business tomorrow? Because what I've recognized is that, when we're doing projects together, sometimes it can really be slowed down in the decision-making process. And I wanted to know if that's a case of something that we need to discuss, or is it something that we haven't yet addressed? And so in that process, so once they've validated to me that we're important, that the impact is great, I can have an honest conversation about, well, I've kind of noticed this. I'm not too sure why that is, but I'd like to get your opinion. You can have a really honest conversation. I think sometimes we kind of, skirt around those difficult conversations. But I think if you have a relationship with somebody, it's really the test of those relationships is in those honest conversations, and really kind of putting the first step out there. And sometimes you just have to be the proactive one and put it out there. But I've always found when positioned well, you can have a very honest conversation and get new information that you never would have had unless you have done that specific thing. Yeah,
some great points there. And what I get from what you just said there, it's about asking the right questions as well, isn't it?
100%. I've always believed questions are the answers.
Yeah, I'm going to nick that saying, by the way. Questions are the answers. And by the way, when I nick it, I will take full credit for it, Jermaine.
Go for it, my friend. Go for it.
Seriously, that's a really good point. Jermaine, off air we would talk, because what I get from this is you look at organisations, you see what they're doing, and you look to improve it. So I guess you're kind of looking at mistakes they're making. And I'm curious, from your point of view, what's one of the biggest mistakes that you've made in business, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake I've made in business is trying to do it by myself. It's thinking I could do it by myself and not thinking about the team. I think sometimes when you're in sales, you can go into this kind of Lone Ranger attitude. And it's all about you. It's all about you making the sale, and everybody else is expendable. They're just a resource to you. And, I have to admit, and with, some shame in the background, I was that guy. I was, beat my targets. I do pretty well in different circumstances, but I'd take the credit. I wouldn't give anybody else any credit. But when I was in trouble and needed help, pride kicked in, and I'd make excuses, and that was my big failsafe. I thought, starting out, that sales was about the individual. It was about me. It was about what I did, and not necessarily about how you contribute and collaborate with your team members and with the wider business. That was a real big mistake. Well, I learned that fairly quickly, the hard way, unfortunately. But collaboration and being able to lead, I think, are really important skills for salespeople.
You're listening to the Renegade Recruiter Unleashed podcast. For show notes, additional resources, and podcast updates, head over to www.therenegaderecruiter.com.
I can imagine there's a lot of salespeople listening to that right now who can relate to what you just said there, because that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No.
And Jermaine, what about if there's a business owner listening to this right now who perhaps they've got a team member who's making the mistakes that you just mentioned there? I mean, what advice would you say to the business owner? What could they say to the team member to sort of I guess help them?
Well, I think there are two things. I think sometimes within the business you kind of I personally believe, and I'm building a team right now, so this is really cognizant in my mind in terms of what culture I want to create. But I personally believe that you behave what you see. Okay. And so if you have somebody who's a lone ranger in the office, then it usually means one of two things. Is that one, there's not a perpetual culture or value that's being shown or demonstrated by leadership that gives that person context to how they should be behaving inside that organization. Yeah. And the second thing is there isn't a kind of really clear kind of behavioral metrics or an understanding of the expectations being shared to that person on a regular basis from that manager. So the first thing I do is take ownership as a leader and says, listen, I just want to take responsibility here because I have not been a great leader. And it seems as if, the behavior that we can sometimes adopt here in the office can sometimes be, selfish. It can be quite self-indulgent, and I'm guilty of that as well. And what I've noticed at times is when you are selling, you can sometimes come across as being somebody who is, being self-indulgent and disparate from the team, and the result of that is the team is causing disharmony with the team, and this is happening. So you can be really, really transparent with it, and then you ask the question, say, tell me your particular perspective and what you would like to get out of, being here in this business and actually working collaboratively with us. So I think you need to take ownership as the leader, give the feedback back to the person, allow them to respond, but then set the expectations for how you want the behavior to be, and then lead by example as well.
Yeah, and I like that again. Behavior is what you see. That's so true. And as a business owner, it's kind of difficult sometimes to accept that. But it is so true. It's a great point. Then it's about, I guess, in a nutshell, to summarise that, would you say that's about accepting responsibility for what's going on in your business?
Yeah, 100%. So I have no idea if I've kind of articulated it well enough, but absolutely, it's just so cognizant in my mind, because I'm now thinking about what kind of leader do I want to be for my team.
Yeah.
And what do I want to behave out into the world so they catch on to that? They that's the expectation for our behavior and the values that we have. So absolutely, it's about taking responsibility.
Excellent. And you mentioned earlier that you're currently building your team. Overall, Jermaine, how do you go about growing your business?
Yeah, so I do a lot on LinkedIn. I have referrals, affiliates, JVs. I do talks in regards to the business, and I have just kind of a great model of growing internally with the clients that I work with. And so what tends to happen, I have to practice what I preach because this is what I teach. So there's no hiding it. So when I go into an organization helping them to grow and become more profitable with their customers, I have to be doing the same thing. And so that tends to happen. So I'm growing with those customers as they are seeing success, and I'm growing with them. Outside of that, I see scale being impact, and having a team allows me to extend the impact that we could have over time. So I'm excited about growth and seeing that happen and spreading the message. We're not a perfect business. We've definitely got some flaws and things we need to fix. But I know having some people come in who are smarter than me in different areas and adding to that will definitely send us a long way forward.
Excellent.
And
Drew, sorry, go on, sorry.
Yeah, I can say, Jermaine, what's been, we were talking off air a bit, so I may know how you can answer this question, but what's been sort of the biggest breakthrough in your business over the past 12 months? So something that you've done or achieved that you just think, if I'd only had done that 2 years ago, I'd be like forever on. But what's been the biggest breakthrough for you?
So I think the biggest, the personal breakthrough, I'll give one, a business and a personal one, if that's okay. But so the personal one is really a mindset shift. It was understanding that if I wanted to achieve what I wanted, I had to become somebody different. And not just do something different, but actually becoming someone different. So, and after reading kind of Grant Cardone's book, the 10X Rule, and thinking about that, it was definitely I definitely got that from it. Not just the activity, but it's actually the becoming process. So who do I need to become? Who is somebody who, in that moment of achieving that, what kind of behavior, who would that person be? That kind of Jermaine 2.0, 3.0, 4.0.
Yeah.
And so that was a big breakthrough for me, is thinking about that process and then deciding daily to become that person. So that's a big personal breakthrough. And the business one was actually just taking risks to take on another business, which was the Customer Growth Summit, which is happening in November this year for 200 plus sales leaders. And that was a huge undertaking. I did it, successfully pre-selling 100 tickets to start with, using a range of different LinkedIn strategies and direct selling. But the process it's been hugely challenging to put together. And it was only recently I've been able to kind of partner and freelance with different people. But I've got some amazing people coming to the event who have been kind of amazing advocates for the event. But that's probably been the biggest breakthrough, is challenging my perception of what I could hold and produce. And this has been it, the Customer Growth Summit.
Awesome. And just on that, where can, if anyone listen to this who wants to come along, where can we find out more about that event?
Yeah, so customergrowthsummit.com. You can follow Summit Growth at Twitter. You'll definitely see some marketing messages happening on LinkedIn. But you can definitely go to customergrowthsummit.com.
Awesome.
And what's the summit about, Jermaine?
Yeah, so it's really about that. So it's about really sales leaders understanding how they can really become true trusted advisors to their customers. So we're in a really kind of fastly commoditized industry and world that we're in. How do you create a unique value differentiation that allows you to stay ahead of your competition and protect the investments that you've made in your customers? And so we're going to look at a whole range of different strategies and ideas around doubling your sales, reducing your sales cycle, and becoming a true trusted advisor.
Yeah,
brilliant. And sorry, Terry. Just on the event, Jermaine. Again, put on event, something that me and Terry have spoken about quite recently. I know it's something that our clients do or want to do. So, from your point of view, from your experience, can you give us sort of 3 things that you did in promoting the event that worked really well, and also 3 things that you would do differently next time?
Yeah, so I think the first thing was actually building relationships before I needed them.
Okay.
So what I did is, before conceptually it was in my head, I was already building relationships with other sales leaders. So that when I went back to them to ask and to communicate, they already knew me. There was already familiarity, and they knew what I was about. And so that made it easier to make that first connection with that. The second thing was, I'm a complete student of LinkedIn. I've been studying it for 4 years, spent about $10,000 on my own education in learning it. So I've learned specific types of strategies that help me best put out that message in a really strategic way. And so that really helped me right at the beginning. I can share a strategy in just a moment. But my third thing that I did was I went out and got help. I went out and looked for partners who would share that message as well of the event, and that helped me significantly. Now, a strategy for LinkedIn that people may want to have a look at is what I call kind of influencer hacking. Now, I'm not sure if anybody's kind of used this, but the @ sign is a really interesting function on LinkedIn. So it's the behavior of the @ sign is perhaps different to what people expect. So when you use the @ sign, you automatically...
Sorry, Jermaine, I can't hear. Use the what sign? Sorry,
the
@
sign.
The @ sign. So the @ sign. You know when you can have like
just
@s.
Sorry, yes.
Like on Twitter,
so
but LinkedIn, basically.
No, absolutely. For LinkedIn. So when you go into to post something, use the @ sign. LinkedIn automatically indexes companies and people that you may want to connect with. Now, what I say is, if you have an influencer that you recognize they know you, and they already have existing conversations and momentum within their own profile group, within their own network, then collaborating with them and having them share your specific event, but also copy you in as well, all of a sudden you have this kind of cross-pollination of activity. So you get into their feed, and once somebody comments on their feed, it goes into somebody else's, and you get this kind of ripple effect and momentum.
So,
and when that
sorry.
happens, you can leverage many different things.
Jermaine, just to cut in there, just to make sure that I understand. So let's say, for example, when this podcast goes live, I want to share it on LinkedIn. I would share it on my profile, share an update on my profile, but do the @ sign, type your name in. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Sort of tag you, and then share it, and then obviously it goes to your followers as well. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
And then. So it goes not only to my followers but your followers, and then obviously we're getting sort of the cross pollination of each other's network. Is that what you're trying to say?
That is exactly it. And whenever somebody comments, it goes into their network as well, or likes it. So unless they've switched off the notifications to their profile, if they haven't, which most people don't, then it will go into their profile, and you get this kind of cross pollination of activity taking place. And you can actually track the analytics on that as well.
Brilliant.
Very good, excellent, yeah. Excellent.
Good relationship. So, three things. So three things I'll do differently.
Yeah, okay, three things that went wrong or you do differently.
I think the three things. I would have gotten help sooner. I would have spent that money very, very quick to get help sooner. I would have set up the structure of the communication in a different way, so that it was more seamless, and people were kind of more. It would be easier for people just to communicate and get information about the event in a more seamless way. In that way, and I think the other thing would. I think those are the two big things. I just would have got help faster.
Awesome. That
would have been and communication would have been much more seamless in that regard.
Yeah, and just on the event, sorry, just go back to it. Where is the event?
Sheraton Park Hotel, Park Lane Hotel, Green Park.
Okay. What date?
16th and 17th of November.
16th and 17th of November, Business Growth Summit. Excellent.
Customer Growth Summit. Yeah.
Customer. You did say customer growth. Yeah. Excellent. What's the best piece of advice you've been given from a mentor, or someone that you've learned from?
Wow. There's so many kind of great pieces of advice out there. I'd probably have to say, this is interesting. I think it would be that you have to do the hard right over the easy wrong. And what I mean by that is, there was a time when I was starting business that you often would just look for the easiest way to do something, and you avoid the right thing, although it's harder. And so the big thing that I got in terms of really mentorship was saying, no, just do the hard thing, because in the end, that hard thing will give you the better result, rather than trying to do it the easy way. And so I think I needed to hear those words when I was starting out, so I knew I was prioritizing the right things.
And who did that come from?
So that came from a good friend of mine named Jonathan Farrington, he did kind of really inspired by that.
And who's been sort of the biggest influencer on your business journey?
I think it's interesting. I think it's been kind of a mentor I've never really met. So I often will read and listen to kind of audio. I think Jim Rohn was a big influence when I started out. The first book I got was Stephen Covey, but the first video I ever saw of somebody speaking was Jim Rohn, and he talked about a very commonly known phrase where he talks about never wish it were easier, wish that you were better. And the first time I heard that quote, I was like, holy moly, he's talking to me. Because it's not that I was lazy, it's not that I was thinking, but sometimes we fall into this complacency trap where we believe we're entitled to something, and no one's entitled to anything. Everything's earned. And so by that definition, it helped me to just get some context around what I wanted. And I guess I just became kind of patient with success, but impatient with progress.
Awesome. Awesome. Great advice.
Yeah, very good. Well, as always, appreciated. If you as you're listening to this, if you enjoyed this, please share this on iTunes. Really appreciate it. Please share it with your friends and colleagues. This is Terry Edwards, Renegade Recruiter. Take care, take action, and be relentless.